We've been talking about how living organisms affect soil formation. Said living organisms such as the earthworms, the termites, and even humans like us affect soil formation. We affect soil formation. Termites, for instance, as they build their termite houses, their termitariums, they tend to alter the soil. And as they take in plant materials into the soil to store, they tend to cause mixing of the soil. Even earthworms cause soil formation. They participate in soil formation by burrowing into the soil. And other burrowing organisms like the crabs, as they burrow into the soil, they dig the soil and mix it. It causes mixing, it causes some particles that were originally inside the soil to be pushed outside, and that kind of mixing action affects the type of soil that is formed. It's part of the soil formation process. And even humans too, to till the soil, we also affect soil formation. We also participate in soil formation. Plant roots also take part in forming soil. As the soil, plant roots grow in the soil, they tend to also affect the particles that are in the path of the roots, and they also cause breakdown of even some parent materials as they penetrate these parent materials and make them vulnerable to be disintegrated, either chemically or through other physical means. Then microorganisms also participate in biogeochemical nutrient cycling. Microorganisms like Nitrosomonas, Nitrobacter, Pseudomonas species, and many other microorganisms that take part in nitrogen cycle are involved in nutrient cycle, and the type of nutrients in the soil are also part of the soil formation process. So they participate in all of these processes of soil formation. And even humans too, apart from the fact that we till the soil for agricultural purposes, we also transport parent materials from one place to another. We transport parent materials from one place to another in form of dredging, in form of deposition of tanks and filling and all of that. It's also part of the soil formation process. Then the leaf litter, the leaves that are deposited by plants, also affects the kind of soil that is formed. The kind of soil that is formed is also affected by soil formation, because the leaves that are being deposited by the soil basically add nutrients to the soil. Now look at this. If you look at this diagram, you notice that living organisms of various kinds participate in soil formation processes. Like this animal that burrowed into the soil. You see that it took an earthworm, it's eating an earthworm. Okay, and after eating, it also defecates. It adds nutrients, and the burrowing activity also causes the mixing of the soil as it digs out the soil. The fungi in the soil also participate in soil formation. Microorganisms are involved in nutrient cycling. The earthworms also causes the mixing of the soil as they burrow into the soil. And many other organisms, other plants that are on the surface of the soil, as their leaves are deposited in the soil, they cause the soil to have humus, and humus tends to make the soil to be rich. Humus tends to make the soil to be rich in nutrients. Okay, so living organisms are also responsible for also factors of soil formation. Here you can see a plant root that's growing in the soil. The plant root affects the flow of water, and as the water finds its path, it causes some kind of movement of particles. And this plant root also can cause the breakdown of other parent materials as it grows and penetrates on these parent materials. Okay, that's basically what that picture is trying to illustrate. Okay, so living organisms are also factors of soil formation. They mix organic matter. They also are responsible for nutrient cycling. They mix the soil profile in the form of tilling of the soil for agricultural purposes in the case of humans. And we also transport parent materials, either knowingly or unknowingly. So basically, that's how we living organisms affect the soil. Now, dead plants and fallen leaves and stems also add humus, as I explained. They begin their decomposition in the surface, and as they decompose and they get mixed in the surface of the in the soil, they add organic matter into the soil. So they are part of the soil formation process. The next factor we want to look at is time. Time is another factor that affects soil formation. Time is another factor that affects soil formation. How does time affect soil formation? Now, time affects soil formation in that the various processes of soil formation requires time. The formation of soil, the properties of a soil requires time. And that's what this diagram is trying to illustrate. Let's assume that the parent material we're talking about is a newly sand-filled area. Okay, let's illustrate with that. You know, humans do a lot of dredging. Okay, now assume that a land is just newly dredged, and the parent material that's been domiciled there is the sand that is being deposited in that area. Now, how will that sand, the sand that is being deposited, form a mature soil? It takes place over time. Do you know that even the new site in NDU was sand-filled? Earlier, it was just a heap of sand. But now you have grasses, you have trees, you have various stratas of the soil being formed in that soil. It requires time. If you look at the diagram in the left hand, in the figure, in the left-hand side, you notice that this soil that was initially deposited has no structure at all. It has no stratification. It doesn't even have other living organisms. The soil is just without, it's not fully formed. Now, pedogenesis begins when physical weathering starts to take place. You notice that at the top and left-hand side, notice that there are raindrops. The rain helps to break down the parent material gradually. As the rain hits on the surface of the parent material and percolates, it helps to move some particles from the surface to the lower horizon. And gradually, the second at the left-hand side, the second part of the left-hand side, you notice that the soil is gradually being formed. You now begin to see organic matter and even plants gradually emerging. And the soil horizons are gradually being formed. You now see that the sea horizon is formed. The sea horizon is formed. Then, and in the third picture there, you notice that gradually other features of the soil are being formed. Plants have grown. The A horizon is formed. That is the horizon of organic matter has formed, and it also other horizons are also gradually forming. You see the sea horizon and the bedrock. Then gradually you now have organic matter forming the O horizon. Then you have the A horizon. You have other living organisms in the soil, the B horizon, as well as the C horizon. So you notice that all of these processes require time. It takes millions of years for a soil, hundreds to millions of years for a soil to be formed. Sorry, hundreds to thousands of years for a soil to be formed. According to literature, it takes 800 to 1,000 years for just 2.5 millimeters of fertile soil to be formed. So it takes a long period of time. It's not something that takes place within a short period of time. So time, that's why soil formation, time is also a factor of soil formation. That's why time is also a factor of soil formation. So to cap it up, I want to have a brief revision of what we discussed so far. To cap it up, we want to have a brief revision of what we discussed so far. Now, we had established that soil formation or pedogenesis is defined as the development of soils and their properties. And pedogenesis can be caused by the combined effects of physical, chemical, biological, and anthropogenical processes in soil on soil parent material. We also mentioned that we have 5 factors of soil formation, and the 5 factors of soil formation are parent material, climate, topography, living organisms, and time. Then we also looked at each of those parent materials. Okay, like this diagram here illustrates that each of these factors play a very important role in affecting soil formation. We looked at parent materials. That parent materials basically refers to the initial state, the bedrock that forms the soil, the rock, and it can also refer to unconsolidated substances. It can also refer to unconsolidated substances, such as deposits from erosion of the soil, and also by particles that are carried by wind, and particles that are deposited as a result of glacial deposits, particles that are deposited as a result of volcanic eruption. All of these factors contribute to, all of these factors are called parent materials. And we also said that there are 2 different types of parent materials. Sorry, we have 3 different classes or types of parent materials. We have cumulus parent materials, we have transported parent materials, and we have residual parent materials. We have 3 types of parent materials. We have residual parent materials, cumulus parent materials, and transported parent materials. The residual parent materials are parent materials that were originally in that place and are gradually undergoing decomposition. The transported ones are the ones that are transported by wind, water, or glacial deposits. As erosion takes place, the erosion washes away the surface of the soil and deposits it in somewhere else. So those residual parent materials, those are transported parent materials. And we have cumulus parent materials, which are organic matter that have grown in such a place and have been deposited. Then we also looked at weathering of parent materials, and we have defined weathering basically as the breakdown of parent material. Weathering basically is defined as the disintegration and decomposition of rocks and minerals by natural processes. Basically, that's what we have discussed about weathering, that it is the breakdown of parent materials. And we also said that parent materials are broken down by two processes, physically and chemically. The physical process is called physical disintegration, and the chemical process is referred to as chemical decomposition and disintegration. Chemical decomposition and disintegration. Now, we looked at chemical decomposition and transformation. Now, the physical weathering occurs as a result of physical activities, such as freezing, such as the action of wind and other factors. Now, we illustrated with this diagram how it affects the breakdown of parent material. Now, the physical disintegration is caused by actions of freezing or ice. When the water in this parent material freezes, the ice causes expansion, and the expansion eventually causes cracks. Then the action of wind, rain, hail, and ice breaks down the organic matter, the parent material into smaller pieces. Then chemical weathering now continues through processes such as hydration, the solutions of salt and water. Then we also have oxidation, reduction, and many other chemical factors that are responsible for the breakdown of parent materials chemically. Then we also looked at how topography affects soil formation. And we said topography affects soil formation basically as a result of erosion. Topography basically refers to the features on the surface of an area or land. Basically, it refers to the features on the surface of an area. And topography, the topography of the soil determines whether the movement of water on the surface of the soil would either be fast or slow. And when the topography is not steep, there tends to be a lesser movement of water, and it determines the type of soil that will be formed. But in steep topographies, there tends to be erosion, and this erosion results in the movement of substances from the top slope, that's on top of the hill, to the valley. And the type of horizons that are formed, the thickness of the soil horizons are also determined by that. And the top slope, you tend to have thin A horizon compared to the thick horizon in the toe slope. We also looked at another factor of soil formation, which is climate. And we said climate refers to the characteristics of weather as they evolve over time scales longer than those necessary for soil properties to develop. So the climate basically refers to the characteristics of weather, and climate the effect of climate on weather on the soil is basically as a result of the moisture content. That's as a temperature, the temperature and precipitation, as well as storm patterns of the soil, determines the type of soil that will be formed. That in a global scale, the climate affects the type of soil that will develop in a particular area. Okay. Then we also looked at how the climate determines the moisture content of the soil, that when precipitation is higher than evapotranspiration, that the soil tend to have high moisture content than when there is lesser evapotranspiration, when there is more evapotranspiration than precipitation. So soils that have higher precipitation tend to have higher moisture than those that have lower precipitation. So the evapotranspiration causes loss of water, while precipitation adds water or moisture to the soil. And the moisture content of the soil determines the activities that take place. Like higher temperatures affect the rate of chemical reaction in the soil. Higher temperatures also affect microbial activities, the rate at which microorganisms are able to break down organic matter. Higher temperatures also affect the growth of plants, how fast plants will grow, or whether plants will grow or not. The type of temperature in an area affects all of that. Then we also looked at another factor of soil formation, which is living organisms or biota. The living organisms in an area affects the type of soil that is formed, and living organisms play very significant roles in organic matter accumulation, profile mixing, and biogeochemical nutrient cycles. They play a very important role in organic matter accumulation, particularly in an area where you have in forested areas where you have trees. There tends to be defoliation, which adds organic matter. The death of these trees and grasses in these areas also adds organic matter into the soil and form more humus than in desert areas where there are no plants. Then we also looked at the fact that living organisms carry out profile mixing. They mix the soil. Okay. They mix the soil. Even we humans participate in that, knowingly or unknowingly. When we carry out agricultural purposes, we mix the soil. We even break parent materials. As we till the soil, we also, in the process, break down parent materials as well. Then our dredging activities also are also involved in formation of soils. Then living organisms also take part in nutrient cycling. Those that are particularly the microorganisms and even fungi, as they break down organic matter in the soil, they tend to take help in the formation of soil. Then we also looked at the fact that burrowing animals also, as they burrow into the soil, they help in profile mixing as well. As they burrow into the soil, they dig out soil particles, and those particles, those soils that have been dug out, are mixed up, and that process forms soil. Okay. Then we also looked at plant roots, as they also break down organic matter and also affects other processes of soil formation. And we eventually looked at time. That time is a very important factor in soil formation, because all the other factors of soil formation can actually come into play. They require time to take place. So the formation of soil requires a specific time, a long period of time for soil to take place. Hundreds to thousands of years for a soil to form. And when we talk about soil formation, it just said it means the formation of soil and their properties. For a soil to have the complete properties that are characteristic of a specific type of soil is what we call soil formation or pedogenesis. So that's how far we can go in this lecture.